Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwan, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the Imperium as we get into the Servitor. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day, and if you have any suggestions, please comment down below. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Servitor. A servitor is a catch-all term applied to a wide class of mindless, cybernetic slave drones created from the fusion of human flesh and robotic technology. They are used to carry out all manner of manual tasks across the Imperium of Man. While many of these programmed cybernetic slaves are genetically engineered, vat-grown subhuman clones, created by the Adeptus Mechanicus from human genomes who have their bionic implants installed after birth, others were once truly human. These servitors were usually criminals who broke the imperial law, particularly a person who has offended or damaged the Adeptus Mechanicus in some fashion. These unfortunate criminals will be sentenced to servitude in perpetuities by the arbitrators or judges of the Adeptus Arbites, and will be handed over to the Mechanicus Tech Priest to be mind-wiped, reprogrammed, and cybernetically enhanced to serve some specific rudimentary function. Once lobotomized and improved by the process of painful operation, even criminals and heretics are granted one last chance to serve the Imperium. The altered and fragmented brains of a servitor functions poorly unless constantly supervised. Most will eventually go into a state of mind lock, babbling incoherent nonsense as the servitor tries to assert some sort of control over its functions. Servitors are created by the Adeptus Mechanicus and supplied to departments of the Adeptus Terra, such as the Administratum and the Inquisition, as well as other military organizations like the Imperial Guard and various Space Marine chapters. Servitors make up the vast bulk of the population of Mars and other forge worlds of the Mechanicus, where they fulfill the role of tireless workers, soldiers, and laborers. Servitors came to exist because of the fear instilled in the Imperium of artificial intelligence. During the Age of Strife, man was attacked by the very AI they created. They were called the Men of Iron. These Men of Iron were corrupted by chaos, and in connection with terrible warp storms, ushered in the darkest time period in human history. Because of this, all future attempts to create artificial intelligence was seen as heretical, and instead, servitors were created to take the place of AI. Typical servitor types include technomats, which operate and service various machines, holomats, which act as holographic recording devices, lexomats, which serve as semi-organic computers with tremendous calculating power for recording and keeping data storage, and drones, which are cybernetic robots, stupid and essentially mindless slaves ideal for menial work and little else. Servitors are often used to carry out the more dangerous or laborious duties in the Imperium, such as heavy mining in hostile planetary or asteroid conditions. They also accompany Tech Priest engine seers on the battlefield with the Imperial Guard, as well as Space Marine Tech Marines. These types aid in the repair of vehicles or sometimes carry large and dangerous weapons, such as a plasma cannon. For both forces, the Space Marines and the Imperial Guard, the Servitors are practically identical cybernetically, although the Servitors of the Space Marine chapter are created from the failed Astarte initiates, who were made largely brain-dead as a result of their body's rejection of the implant Space Marine gene seed organ before the transformation into cyborgs. However, becoming a servitor allows them another opportunity to serve their chapter and the Emperor. Perhaps the most feared of all the servitors are the Praetorian servitors, a class of heavily armed and armored gun servitors deployed by the Adeptus Mechanicus to guard the Tech Priest and the temples dedicated to the Machine God. For those heretics found guilty of heresies of insufficient severity to warrant immediate execution, there is another fate in store: arcoflagellation. An arcoflagellant servitor undergoes an extended program of surgical modifications, including muscle grafts, combat drug injections, and cybernetically implanted weaponry. At the same time, the subject's mind is reconditioned to turn him into a berserking killing machine who seeks only to destroy enemies of the Emperor. A battle servitor is a dedicated heavy combat servitor used for melee or ranged combat. Battle servitors comprise a significant portion of the Adeptus Mechanicus' military force, but other patterns of battle servitors are used by many military organizations within the Imperium. Battle Servitors are much more robust and powerful military cyborgs than their combat Servitor counterparts. The Charon pattern is a light battle servitor, humanoid in shape, found often in service of the Imperial Navy, and numerous other star vessels, are shock troops and defenders in boarding actions. They can be armed with heavy weapons, such as heavy bolters or heavy flamers, for void ship combat. Those found in the Corynus Expanse are often very old, their inorganic components having been recycled through numerous bodies and recovered from the fallen of the battlefield. As a result, they have a reputation for their machine spirit being unreliable in combat, and not knowing friend from foe on occasions. This makes some void ship captains reluctant to employ them except in the direst of needs. A Cataphron Battle Servitor is a type of heavy battle servitor used by the military forces of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Though they possess a once-human brain like all servitors, the Cataphron Battle Servitor has been severed from all emotion and independent thought, and serves as little more than a living weapon controlled by the orders of the Mechanicus' tech priests. They are much larger and more powerful than the standard servitors, employed for multiple tasks across the Imperium of Man. There are two variants of the Cataphron Battle Servitor normally employed. Depending on the tactical objective of the controlling tech adepts, the Cataphron Breacher and the Cataphron Destroyer is used. Outfitted with a cluster of manipular arms, each tipped with various writing instruments, a calligraphous servitor is capable of copying practically any document they are given. They can also transcribe spoken word, and are often used to preserve sermons and speeches, as well as taking dictation of letters, orders, and regulations. Many high-ranking members of the Ordos of the Inquisition have at least one calligraphous servitor on hand, while large imperial monasteries and abbeys may have hundreds, usually engaged in replicating and preserving ancient texts. The Calyx Pattern Task Servitor is one of the most commonly seen pieces of technology in the Calyxian sector, possessing thousands of variants and sub-patterns produced on Forge Worlds across the region. At its essence, the design is for a servitor utterly devoted to performing a single tactical task with utmost specialty. The engineers attached to combat regiments are often granted the use of one of a number of sub-patterns of the Calyx Servitor, especially designed for maintenance and repair of military equipment. The Cenobite Servitors assist the chaplain of the Black Templar Space Marine chapter in their holy duties. Marching in the shadow of the chaplain, they are used to carry relics into battle, ennoting prayers of worship to the Emperor and bolstering the faith of nearby battle brothers. They often carry equipment, repair technology, and operate basic interfaces on Black Templar vessels and vehicles. They are considered a symbol of the chapter's faith, as a Black Templar's battle brother can gain the service of such a servitor as a symbol of status and trust from their peers. The rare and valuable Clypeus-class combat servitor is typically reserved for tech priests who have proven their worth in the Lathius. The Lathius Mechanicum maintains limited reserves of these servitors to assign as protectors to those attached to the Imperial Guard, who have similarly proven themselves as assets to the effort of the war in the Spinward Front. The tech priest granted the protection of this servitor find no better guardian for their work on the battlefield, as the whole of the pattern's advanced construction is geared toward delivering lethal retribution upon would-be assailants. Although armed with a deadly electro-gladius, its greatest value is the protective field generator that allows it to shrug off deadly blows again and again over the course of continued service. A various assault can briefly overwhelm the field, but few enemies survive long enough to exploit this vulnerability. Although most commonly deployed in mining colonies, the Lath Pattern Breacher Servitor also sees considerable combat use among sappers and siege regiments. The adamantium-tipped drills replace its hands serve just as well in forcing entry to enemy strongholds as they do in unearthing ore deposits far from the front lines. Tech priests, well versed in the rights of the servitor cognitator mechanisms, sometimes find it appropriate to develop protocols for applying the drill to a smaller clash, allowing them to direct their piercing bite of the drill at a heavily armored enemy. By this means, a breacher servitor can be the bane of not only a fortress wall, but the elite troop guarding it. Pugnus-class combat servitors are commonly used as a combination of a bodyguard and a shock troop by the soldiers and auxiliaries of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Its robust frame is equipped with 2 massive servo fists that can pummel apart even the hardiest of enemies. Many tech priests placed on the front lines of battle owe their lives to the impressive strength of these servitors. The most martial inclined among the Red Priesthood sometimes gather groups of these servitors to assault an enemy position. Originally intended as a heavy-duty utility servitor that could operate in hazardous conditions, the Spatha pattern servitor first gained notoriety during the ill-fated siege of Cyclopia. Home to a host of Imperial research stations manned only by servitors, 3 raider vessels entered the star system in the hopes of boarding and pillaging whatever they could before Imperial forces could respond. The fabricator that controlled the network of Cyclopean stations had no choice but to do the unthinkable and modify the Spatha Angram pattern so that he could repel the invaders. Astonishingly, the Spatha pattern servitor proved to be better at this task than his previous duty. Their heavy armor and mechanical attachments make them natural combat servitors. It took a further 50 standard years for the leaders of the Latha worlds to sanction the fabricator's variant design, a relatively short approval period by Mechanicus standards, but by then the notorious impatient man had taken the design and already left the Calyx sector for greener pastures. In more recent years, Spatha pattern servitors have been pressed into service as bodyguards in some of the more remote areas of the worlds. Found mostly on research stations across the Latha worlds, as well as explorator vessels leaving the Calyx sector for regions unknown. The Velux is an exceptionally fast and overly aggressive type of combat servitor, programmed to track down and eliminate the would-be intruders. Tightly bundled coils of vat-grown muscle give the servitor its incredible speed and dexterity, and its arms are each mounted as an integral coil whip, which the Velux tends to use in a frenzied spinning motion, pulverizing whatever happens to be in its way. Kept dormant when not in use, they are rightfully feared by friend and foe alike. Gun servitors are intended to provide fire support for a tech priest as he works, and often they will have a whole limb replaced with cybernetically implanted weapons. Many will have ammunition hoppers mounted somewhere on their bodies so that they can lay down continuous currents of fire without needing to reload. The Incendio-class gun servitor is a favorite of engineers assigned to the trenches of the Spinward Front, where a gout of burning promethium can turn the tide of battle. It mounts a flamer integrated in place of its right arm and stores the fuel in an armored compartment in the lower torso, a design that limits the vulnerability of such a volatile fuel source to enemy fire. When directed to the fore of a squad, the servitor can engage its flame to flush the enemy from cover or out of bunkers, or simply roast them where they stand. The Contego pattern servitor is optimized for the analysis and diffusing of suspect explosive devices. The underhive of Gunmetal City is notoriously unstable, and explosive devices can cripple production for months or even years. The Adeptus Mechanicus within the Manufactorums originally crafted these servitors to dispose of volatile substances, which are common in firearm manufacturing. These designs are regarded as relatively disposable, and are usually based around the lobotomized bodies of former arsonists and bomb makers. An up-armored general-purpose servitor chassis is fitted with a small limb-mounted shotgun for destroying explosive devices at close range, and it is combined with a combi tool and a pick reactor. The local precinct fortress has repurposed the servitor for explosive disposal. When fitted for this purpose, the servitor is issued a demolition charge for controlled explosives. While used in the notorious Falls incident, which halted last pack production on Sinford for nearly a year, the servitor has not fallen out of favor within the Calexian Adeptus Arbitus. The Jovian pattern gun servitor has been a mainstay for the last world's fighting forces for millennia, having been employed to defend engineers on the field of battle, and in a variety of other roles since the foundation of the Calyx Expanse. Its STC pattern is ancient and revered, and the heavy firepower of this servitor has heralded victory throughout the Calyx sector. The pattern is defined by its durable construction, heavy power supply, and massive integrated weapon systems. The entirety of the servitor is carefully constructed to optimize firepower for its main gun. Heracli servitors are large, vat-grown, genetically enhanced combat servitors who carry multi-barreled assault cannons and heavy lasers as easily as the Scutari carries a lasgun. They were utilized during the Horus Heresy, but are rarely seen in present day. Industrial or heavy repair servitors have been modified with rigs to lift loads, drill rocks, and smash ore in one of the Imperium's countless industrial complexes, or are fused with specialized repair gear and are responsible for the maintenance of all parts of an industrial complex. Janus Similarca are human-formed servitors that are extremely advanced, often containing only the barest minimum of living tissue. They skirt the edge of direst techno-heresy, with their cognitator-assisted cortex functions and seeming parody of human responses. Playthings of the most fantastically wealthy, Simulacra are often fashioned in the shape of gilded works of art. Human-sized dolls come to life, or seemingly animated statues. But beneath their resplendent fineries lives a clockwork heart and a hydraulic-fed piston limb slave to the harvested living cortex. Despite the wonder and sophistication of these creations, only the most depraved or foolhardy would attempt the sin of passing one as a human, for to do so would prove the unbridled wrath of the cult Mechanicus, and entire worlds have been burned for their transgression in the past. The Lath Pattern Multitask Servitor is one example of a number of common variants of servitors designed to serve as a general assistant to engineers in the field. Although it lacks the dedicated specialties of a more purpose-built servitor, its versatility is invaluable. This servitor is needed when dealing with the chaotic theater of war that the Adeptus Mechanicus personnel must endure in support of the Imperial Guard. This servitor pattern is imprinted with advanced cognitator functions that allow it to follow complex instructions and operate in a wide variety of circumstances. A monotask servitor carries out the most tedious labors within the Space Marine chapter. Tech Marines often replaced at least one of these kinds of servitors' hands with a less powerful version of their own servo arm manipulators. Monotask servitors will not hold up long in the grueling battle Space Marine face, but they can be useful on missions to carry out simple repairs, perform menial labor, and to stand sentry for duty. A lightweight form of servitor drones, choir drones, are found in the Imperial cathedrals and shrine worlds across the Imperium. Most are configured to sing, in some extreme cases only a single note, and then gathered into choirs, numbering anywhere from a few dozen to 1,000 and more. Other Ministorum drones may be said to repeat a sacred chant or prayer over and over, turn prayer wheels, wave prayer flags, or play in an instrumental, such as blowing a sacred horn or beating on a drum. Servitors often outnumber sentient humans amongst the domains of the Adeptus Mechanicus. While most servitors are slow and methodical in whatever routine tasks they exist to perform, the aptly named Murder Servitor are a breed apart. Since their circuit-laced brains have been inlaid with numerous kill routines and slaughter protocols, Murder Servitors are literal killing machines. All native viciousness of a human brain combined with the ruthless efficiency and durability of cold steel. Murder servitors are often exclusively utilized aboard spacecraft and orbital stations for a number of reasons. With limited space and resources for guards, Imperial prison starships controlled by the Inquisition often maintain a seizable contingent of murder servitors. Hunched, evil things, murder servitors are smaller and quicker than their more benign cousins. Armed with blades and hooks, and programmed with a homicidal nature, they stalk the passages of their assigned vessels, ambushing trespassers and dragging their corpses back to their inquisitorial masters. Boarding actions and similar battles are often decided in brutal melee combat. As deadly as these battles are, when Imperial forces clash with traitors, ordinary humans are simply no match in these situations for many Xenos. Orcs, gene-stealers, Eldar corsairs, and other aliens are a major concern in many areas of human-occupied space. Armsmen, no matter how well equipped and trained, can little hope to stand against such horrors within the narrow confines of a void ship or void station. Murder servitors are brutally effective against pirates and mutineers, where gun servitors that sport heavy-range weaponry would be ill-suited to space combat. Murder servitors can be very effective in other environments, from death world jungles to teeming hive cities. However, as massive as Imperial starships are, they are still contained environments. Murder servitors have been known to devolve or malfunction, locking into a kill imperative and ignoring further commands to cease. If not contained, such deviant servitors can even escape and go on to cause further slaughter amongst the population. Lath pattern murder servitors are commonly used aboard starships to supplement boarding parties and raiding forces. These murder servitors are ghoulish skull mask killing machines. The Lath pattern, developed on and favored by the augmented artisans of the Forge world of the Calyx sector, is a hunched predatory monster driven by a sadistic and aggressive machine spirit. Monotalons and viscerator limbs allow them to tear apart most living foes, while metal cutters allow them to burn through muck steel and destroy equipment. Designed to intimidate as much as to kill, Lath pattern murder servitors are consummate hunters, stalking their prey and moving with inhuman speed. If not ordered otherwise, they spend hours hunting any living creature not programmed in their spore targeters, undeterred by any obstruction and unhindered by fear of humanity. Their nature is intended to inspire dread from their chrome skull masks, to long razor-sharp talons and steel weapon limbs, to the electronic howls and moans of its vox booster throats. Most heretics are executed right away, and some are made into acroflagellants. There are those for which even these fates aren't proper punishment. Heretics who have been sentenced to death, but truly wish to atone for their crimes and sins, may be given over to the Penitent engine. Hardwired directly to the engine, the repentant pilot knows only death can grant him or her release, and thus they are often at the front of any battle, seeking both enemies to engage and an end to their suffering. Some devout worshippers have even been known to volunteer for such a fate, seeking to purge themselves of sin, both real and imagined, or to die in service of the Ordos of the Inquisition and the God Emperor. One of a number of patterns of medicate servitors used throughout the Calyx sector, the Remedium pattern servitor is known for its reliability and steady hand, such as they are. Often used when true medical staff are absent, the Remedium can perform numerous common procedures, including basic cybernetic implantation and augmentation. Samic Redemption Servitor is a type of servitor that was created by the Dark Mechanicus heretics from the Dark Forge world of Samic, to be used as a punishment reserved for criminals and unruly serfs. To become a redemption servitor is therefore a fate reserved for traitors, weaklings, and hated enemies of those in power. Many say that the feral intelligence of these drones still bears the tormented, malicious echoes of those now trapped in servitude. Scholars suspect that redemption pattern servitors originated in the Les district, where it remains extremely popular. However, the model can be found in use throughout the world of Samic and in the wider Jericho Reach. The pattern involves heavy replacement of the organic neck, arm, and leg joints with pivots that provide almost 360-degree rotation. The torso is then augmented with 4 additional limbs, creating a squat, spider-like profile. Most models also use emendermal armor plating, though its design varies with the forged city of manufacture. The Redemption Servitor incorporates several pieces of Samic electromagnetic war gear, although it is often substantially poorer quality than the devices used by the world's dark magi. The standard configuration includes a Texorcism cannon, usually installed in the chest and fired through the gullet, for neutralizing other technological enemies. In order to reach and disable precarious wreckage, the Redemption Servitor contains an auxiliary magnetic repulsion system that allows them to traverse unstable structures, and its spiny limbs are capable of puncturing steel. These limbs also double as dangerous weapons, which the Savage Servitors needs little provocation to use. The Redemption pattern's principal drawback is that it is programmed to work as intended. In order to scavenge Samic's waste effectively, they must be relatively autonomous, with a capacity of self-repair and an instinct to seek out any valuable technology. Not only does this cause the automatons to kill for the smallest scrap of tech, it has led to a high incident of the servitors infesting starships bound off-world, spreading these dangerous cyborgs across the galaxy. A servitor is a mindless cybernetic drone created from a fusion of human flesh and robotic technology, used to carry out simple, manual tasks across the Imperium of Man. A variant of the Redemption Servitor is the Guardian configuration. Magi employing Redemption Servitors for specific tasks usually replace their plasma cutters with more formidable arrangements. Solid ammunition weapons are a popular choice, as an extended ammunition feed can be stored in the Servitor's hollowed chest. Up to 2 climbing spindles can also have a chain or power weapon affixed without impacting the automaton's climbing abilities. Another configuration of the Redemption Servitor is the Retriever configuration. Their feeding instincts make Redemption Servitors excellent at live capture, provided the target can be recovered from the Servitor afterwards. If one is employed for this purpose, a Weber is usually mounted on its exterior, and a primitive Auspex package is often added for tracking biosigns. The final configuration of the Redemption Servitor is the Skulker configuration. Despite a lack of physical or pictorial evidence, anecdotes persist of Redemption Servitors equipped for the sheer purpose of causing terror and disrupting an Imperial population. It is claimed that such versions have enhanced Vox units that produce a range of unhallowed cries. The units are also frequently described as being rusty and in poor repair. A Servitor with a common purpose is the self-flagellant variant of a Servitor. A cherubim variant, self-flagellants are designed to inflict constant corporal mortification on an individual. Normally this is accomplished through use of scoridia, but a particular self-flagellant may be programmed to take an individual's food away, interrupt his sleep, howl constantly, tug at his clothes and hair, or otherwise engage in non-stop acts of annoyance. In certain extreme cases, the self-flagellants have been set to inflict actual physical harm, usually by cutting the targeted individual with a small knife or replacing the scoridia with the exorites. However, the ecclesiarchy takes a dim view of such practices. A Servitor that walks a fine line between Servitor and robot is the Shade Servitor. Hot environments are often doubly dangerous to travelers because they can compel visitors to a new planet to strip off their armor in order to withstand the heat, almost invariably a fatal mistake. Shade Servitors have no organic parts and are not in fact truly Servitors in the strict Imperial sense of the word, but more like robots. They are relatively small devices resembling a cone surmounted by a series of ceramatic lamber blades that swiftly rotate in different directions. The devices hover about their master, using their blades as natural fans and parasols, occasionally supplemented with a cold blast of air sent over an internal cooling coil. Shade Servitors have a small internal battery with a 12-hour reserve that constantly recharges via a series of photonic cells along their blades, allowing them to function near ceaselessly in hot, unlit environments. Another less common form of Servitor is the Celibus pattern suppressor Servitor. When the Hive Sibelius Magisterum on Scintilia, the capital world of the Calic sector, needs to disperse crowds of rioters or belligerent Hive residents, they employ suppression Servitors to aid the Adeptus Arbitus or their local enforcers. Designed for intimidation and maximum semi-lethal force, these hulking brutes stand 2.5 meters tall with a hunched ape-like posture. Their face have been replaced with a gilded seal of the Lord Sector, and one hand has been replaced with a massive photonic pistol launcher, capable of scattering rioters like leaves, or tossing a single malefactor through the air with a crushed skull. The other arm has been removed entirely, replaced with a complicated dual weapon attachment. The Magisterum knows that a squad of these can scatter a rampaging crowd of thousands, and they make a point of turning the instigators of these riots into the next batch of suppression Servitors. And the last Servitor we're going to talk about is the Technical Servitor. A Technical Servitor is a common sight in the Imperium, as they are not really intended for use in combat, but are very useful in assisting battlefield operations. These Servitors are often referred to as monotasks, being physically augmented and programmed to perform only a single, very specific function. Commonly, they are used as load lifters and cranes in construction tasks, but more exotic monotasks include the heavy weapons mount and a mobile weapon rack. These are the standard Servitors that accompany a Mechanicus tech priest. And those were 40 facts on the Servitor. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with your friends and thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. This is Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
to put my freedom first in any situation.